And hello, I'm back before you again. Part two of my, biomedical engineering, some research, which I did this evening. So I have a bit of a pre-note to my discussion. My husband got checked out. With his physical. I think it was his physical, and the sad part is that his maternal grandmother had a serious diabetes problem. So she would even, I think, inject insulin into herself. So since for the past 5 years, he's really scared. I don't know. Coincides with my son going to get his UW, University of Washington Masters in Public Policy. Maybe his relative, my husband's cousin, younger cousin, female cousin, kind of made him a little too aware of what could be, because my husband hardly, really does not have a sugar tooth, and so it's rare that he eats and that sort of thing. Natural sugars are acceptable, all right, even a fructose, glucose in fruits, and it's a sucrose is a wonderful molecule, but it's actually a carbohydrate if you think about it, a disaccharide. So it's also essential, but it's dangerous and that sort of thing. If you eat it consumed in very high quantities, it's not good. So his blood sugar level was high, he said, and he had himself checked out, and he. I said dark cocoa reduces the blood sugar level. Dark cocoa, every alternate day or once in 3 days if you took, but he won't listen to me. I don't have an affiliation, right? And I said I pointed out to him that I have two graduate level biochemistry courses, but he won't listen. So he had heard female nutritionists tell him, give him a long list, and I said. You could be eating into your muscle because you don't eat sufficient carbohydrates, and since the pandemic he was not, I back in the old day, when things were working for me. I was more of a more of an athlete, so to speak, on a regular level, not athlete, so that sort of a thing. So he wouldn't listen to me. So I decided to prove to my professors and send Canadian Diabetes Association, because the nutritionist is from there, and see what they say. Right. So protein. All right. We'll go back to protein, and so again, just to repeat what I have on my title: a lack of a proper diet with much metabolism could result in muscle being eaten into. So the last part comes from my son and the internet, and you need to replace protein if you're really working out, and eat sufficient carbohydrates if you're doing long distance running, and training for long distance, any long distance activity, or even a higher level of carbohydrates. So the first point is oxygenated blood. So you have hemoglobin and myoglobin, and hemoglobin is in blood, and myoglobin is in the tissues. And these are both allosteric proteins. And I'll go back to my textbook. Yeah, and this is all right. So oxygen binding activity, and it carries the oxygen throughout the bloodstream, and so myoglobin is in the tissue. I'll just confirm this again. All right, it's been a while since hydrophobic interior of the myoglobin molecule. Let's go on. We'll see what they say here. I thought this was in tissue, because everybody knows hemoglobin. It's a high school thing or school. Just confirm this, and then go on to my other reasoning. It does not quite say here. Myoglobin. Myoglobin. It's a globular protein. Diffusion of oxygen within muscle. It facilitates the diffusion of oxygen within muscle. Myoglobin. I was right. All right. So I just don't want to give the wrong information out here. Wrong research. So myoglobin and hemoglobin. So these are proteins, and oxygen comes from breathing, of course. So it goes joins the bloodstream, and we breathe in oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is given out. Oxygen could also be coming from metabolism. So when you break down starch, you get glucose plus. Let me balance the equation. All right. So C6H10O5 and this gives rise to C6H12 plus H2O 12 O6. So there, and H2O. So there's no oxygen here, but glucose burns, and you get 6CO2 plus 6H2O, 6 plus 6, 12. There's only 6 here, plus oxygen. Glucose plus oxygen. All right, so this is it. This is starch, C6H10O5 to the base end. So it's a biopolymer. So plus an H2O. So this is glucose. N6 is C6H12O6. So glucose plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide plus H2O plus water. And so this, this has to be balanced. So oxygen, so it needs a lot of oxygen. So which comes from, from where does the oxygen come from? From the citric acid cycle? Let's see. Thought I would write down, but then, that's a lot of writing down. Citric acid cycle. There's a whole chapter. It's devoted to citric acid cycle. So oxygen is needed, and then so aerobic, exercise and that sort of thing, aerobic activity helps, and then oxygen, citric acid cycle. You get oxaloacetate, CoA. So from breathing, and so in the bloodstream, so glucose, so starch is metabolized with my equation. Let me look at my equation again. Starch is metabolized. Starch is metabolized with water, and then you get glucose, and then glucose plus oxygen gives rise to carbon dioxide plus water. So carbon dioxide and so oxygen. So in the cells also you have so the cellular activity also needs oxygen. The ECM, extracellular matrix, which is space. If there's a stomach, then there's beside it there's extracellular matrix. It get at so that sort of thing. ECM would where Again, ECM may have bones, but I'm not a doctor, so you should talk to a doctor for all this. Doctor would know. But so oxygen with glucose, so it's all also. So this means that starch is important, all right, for metabolism. If you're working out a lot, you need to eat a certain amount of carbohydrates. Otherwise, if your protein muscle is getting eaten into, remember, oxygen is needed for myoglobin and bloodstream hemoglobin, oxygenated blood. Then there will be insufficient glucose and oxygen, and this is what we breathe out, right? Six CO2 goes up, and oxygen is taken in. So if we get that, but that's to breathe. I mean, that goes to the heart too. So this would mean that oxygenated blood would myoglobin, which is in the tissues, with muzzle of the tissues, would get eaten into, I guess, because uh, the body is taking up the protein is broken down, proteases and amino acids and polypeptides. What do they do? They would uh, amino acids. What would they do? Let me see here. I have some. So they would. So. So the protein synthesis is because of the transfer RNA and the messenger RNA and the sequence of amino acids in a polypeptide. So protein would not be made, right? I mean, you would have to be consuming meat all the time. A lot of it goes out as waste, as you know. I mean, some of it is stored. Otherwise, then people wouldn't, you know. So therein lies the answer. So the protein synthesis requires transfer RNA and messenger RNA, and the transfer RNA is the crucial link between messenger RNA and the sequence of amino acids in a polypeptide or a protein. And and these messenger and transfer RNA are responsible for synthesis of proteins. So this is the message they send, and the genetic code, I guess, would. I have no idea how the genetic code contributes to making your muscle, but I guess certain traits, muscle. I don't know. I used to have more muscle, She's here, but I'm working. I've joined a gym. New pair of shoes. Went running in the new pair of shoes, and relevant aside, please. But went running in the shoes and the gym, and I've begun to do weights, but you would have to have eggs and nutrition is always important. Eggs and I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat meat. And eggs and have to be made, well made, like regular form. Boiled egg and a fried egg it would not quite do for me. Scrambled eggs. So I know to make pancakes and galettes and French toast. So that's you know, half an hour to 1 hour. Half an hour. All right. So that is point one of my discussion. And then citric acid cycle. And my thought was citrate is used, right? Citric acid cycle. So I had pointed out, one of my exercise routine studies about that having Gatorade with citrate speeds up the citric acid, bypasses two steps. Straight away goes to citrate with citrate synthase as the enzyme. And so that would help. Citric acid is in lemon. lime, lemon. And so I wondered, in East Indian cooking, Kannada cooking, we use tartaric acid, tartrate. So tartrate is a tricarboxylic acid. Citrate is or yeah, vice versa. Citrate is dicarboxylic. I forget. Quick check on from yourselves when you're listening to me. So, so how would tartrate, um, you know, interfere with the citric acid cycle? All right, or help the citric acid cycle. So tartrate, I suppose, is broken down, and so I think that's what happens. Citrate is tricarboxyl. Mhm. So citric acid, so tartaric acid is just dicarboxylate. So tartaric acid would combine with maybe you should that would be too much vinegar. It would be too much, right? That would be too tangy, too sour. So tartrate. That's another study. So somebody can do. So tartrate is an interesting aspect. Then there's fumarate, and so that's the rest of it. And then part three, what did I want to talk about? The point three. Point three is this is glycogen degradation. Glucose is stored in the intracellular polycellular intracellular. That was right. ECM it does not have. Intracellular. I'm congratulating myself. See, I got the right thing thought. Intracellular polysaccharide, starch, and glycogen. Most of the glycogen in vertebrates is found in muscle and liver cells. In electron micrographs, muscle glycogen appears as cytosolic granules with a and this is all the measurement of the glycogen. Glycogen breakdown yields glucose 1 phosphate, which can be converted to glucose 6 phosphate. In muscle, glucose 6 phosphate is metabolized via glycolysis in the citric acid cycle. Okay, so that was all right. So that was right thinking, because it's a lot of reading, and I didn't want to. So So my point is that if you don't eat, so if you're metabolizing a lot and you don't eat metabolizing on a great deal on a regular basis, it includes brain activity too. You feel hungry if you think a lot, you work hard, and but you have to watch weight gain, and so some healthy food stuffs maybe. For children, we would give in the school. Baby carrots and crackers maybe and rice krispies, that sort of thing, all healthy, which facilitates growth and development. Also because children are growing and developing and metabolizing, so they have to be fed well. All right, and here it's a little less because it's a winter. They don't burn as much, but they walk back from school. So that kind of even otherwise, if you have an eye, small children have to be given tasty food too. So that is what I wanted to stress on. If you are eating insufficient number of carbohydrates, your protein muscle is being eaten into. Protein breaks down and goes into amino acids, but that's so just eating a lot of protein, just eating a lot of but you need to replace carbohydrates. If you run marathons and half marathons, or even half marathons, you need to replace carbohydrates. All right. So I was right. Thank you. Signing out, guys. You see that.